Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to this event. You've turned out in a significant number. Really appreciate your interest, of course, as you see on the screen, in studying in Germany, and of course, given the situation that the whole world is facing today, you're curious about finding out what the travel regulations are during COVID, especially from the South Asia in direction Germany. So before I move further, let me quickly introduce myself to you. I am Aditi Gosavi. I am Senior Advisor Communication with the DAAD Regional Office, New Delhi. And today I'm very happy to be joined by the Science Counselor of the German Embassy, New Delhi, uh, Mr. Philipp von Ritter.
Yes. So this is Philip speaking here, Science Council at the German Embassy. Can you hear me well?
Well, I can't say we can hear you well, Philippe, but you are audible. With a little bit of effort, you are audible.
All right, then I will speak very clearly. I
Yeah.
think that's the interest of us all who have joined. And I think this little incident is a very telling example of the limits of distance models, also distance models at universities. So to all the students that have joined us in such big numbers, I really feel you. I really feel you, and I think this example shows that all the distance methods, all these Zoom, WebEx, and Microsoft Teams calls, they have their faults, and we all look very much forward to the moment when normal university teaching will be possible again. And we all look forward to the moment when you, the Indian students, will again all be able to take your classes in the auditoriums of German universities. Supposing that you can still hear me well, let me say some words to give you an overview of the situation as it is now. So, as you know, there are currently restrictions to mobility from India to Germany. And this restriction, they apply to really all groups with no exceptions. So they apply to IT programmers, to engineers, they apply to workers, they apply to tourists, of course, and very unfortunately, they also apply to you students. So this is also a ban that doesn't only apply to Indian students and travelers coming from India. It's a travel restriction that has been imposed in view of new virus variants in many countries. And these countries include countries like the United Kingdom, like South Africa, like Brazil, and more recently also Portugal and Russia. So this is a restriction that is in place upon recommendation by the German Institute for Infectious Disease, which looks at new virus variants all across the globe and then makes recommendations to see where travel restrictions should be temporarily set in place in order to check the global spread of the pandemic. So something that is in the interest of the whole global battle against the COVID disease. So that being said, so we have a really an extensive travel ban in place. There are exceptions, and there are exceptions notably for students. There are exceptions notably for students for those who already have a residence in Germany. These students can freely travel to Germany, even under the current restrictions. And now there's the other group of students from whom we have received many emails, many Twitter messages, many calls also. Those students that are first-time travelers that don't, for the moment, have a residence in Germany. And these students, they are currently not allowed to travel under the current restrictions. But what we are doing as of today is that we are opening visa sections for the processing of visa requests from these students, so from first-time traveler students. And the idea is that we will prepare for the moment when the traveling ban will be lifted. So we will prepare for the moment, and we will, by opening up the visa sections for you to submit your visa request, we will save you time because we can already now process your visa. We can then have it ready for visa approval. And once the travel ban is lifted, upon recommendation by the German authorities, we will then be able to immediately stamp your visa into your passport, and you will be able to take your flight and start your studies physically in Germany. So this is something that we are starting from today. We are starting in several VFS offices, and we really look forward to this shortening your waiting time and giving you some perspective also. And the second point that we're doing, you may have read it already in the press, is that the German authorities have recognized Covishield vaccination as fully equivalent to AstraZeneca vaccination, because of course it's a licensed product of the same, and will give the same privileges those vaccinated by Covishield as to those vaccinated by AstraZeneca in Germany. That being said, these privileges, they only apply to traveling once the traveling ban is lifted. So you see that there's some opening happening, that there's some perspective that is given to you. And still, I fully understand the situation as it is now. It's frustrating. It's heartbreaking. You have, so many of you have applied for a German university. You have gotten the acceptance from this German university, which is not easy. You've gone through all the paperwork. You have, in some cases, also paid a deposit for an apartment. You have, in your minds, you have already readied yourself for studying in Germany, a very different country with a very different culture, another continent, and now you cannot travel. And that's really a heartbreaking situation. And believe me, it's also heartbreaking and frustrating for the German universities. They are waiting for you. They have carefully selected you. They are keenly waiting for you to be an addition to their classes, to their seminars, to their workshops, and to their university life. And the same applies to your fellow students in Germany. They are eagerly waiting to have you sitting next to them. And it's also heartbreaking, believe me, for the German embassy and personally for me, because we don't take it for granted that you want to come to Germany. We don't take it for granted that so many brilliant young Indian minds that they have a dream of going to Germany. And you are really the living bridge between our countries. You are making, you're at the heart of our bilateral relations, and you're making the cooperation between India and Germany so much easier, so much more fruitful, and you are, of course, the future of the cooperation between our countries. So this is all to say that we cannot wait for the moment for these travel restrictions to be lifted. In the meantime, we now open the visa sections gradually for visas to be processed so that we can save time afterwards. In the meantime, we also encourage German universities to provide distance teaching models, or at least hybrid models, so that you can, for the beginning of the semester, perhaps still study from India, and then in the course of the semester, when the travel ban is lifted, go to Germany. And still, again, I understand this is a frustrating situation, and I ask you all, very humbly, I ask you for your patience. I ask you for your patience against these travel restrictions, against distance learning models that are as horrible as my way of speaking to you right now, through only through voice and with no images. I would have loved to see you and for you to see me. And I've also, in addition to your patience, I ask you to stick to your dream of going to Germany. We really want you to go to Germany, and we will do everything in our power to make that possible as soon as possible. And we look forward to the moment when you will be sitting in German universities. Those were some initial remarks, and now I back to Aditi, and then we can go to the question and answers.
Right. Thank you very much, Philippe. I have to say that this is unfortunate what the technical gaffes gaffes that happen, but then thank you very much, because this message, I think it has given a certain perspective about the problem and how exactly one is trying to sort it out. One is trying to look for solutions to help students, because the idea is not that people should suffer because they wanted to go to Germany. So they're not being left on their own. They're not being left to their own devices. But then at times there is a certain limitation that one has to understand by default. And the idea was that all of the questions that are still getting poured in, we try and answer those. And so most of the questions, honestly, the problem, all of you, dear students, you're sailing in the same boat, so to say, because the DAAD, you know how many offices the DAAD has. You know that there is online presence of the DAAD, of the embassy, of the various German authorities and bodies, even the Goethe Institute and the consulates and so on and so forth. And they're all full of certain standard questions. And so what we will do is we will just pick up some questions from what we've got here in the chat, also in the Q&A pod, and the questions that we got on the social media, and request Philip to answer those. A number of answers have already been responded to. For example, whose applications will be considered first, or what will the visa things be opened at, or applications be open at all the VFS centers, or so on and so forth. So just the questions that I find important, or Philip may not mind answering them all over again. I'll just mention those here and request Philip for his answers. One question that we've come across pretty often is, will universities be advised to admit students for the next semester or next year if they cannot start at the present winter semester or so?
So if you already have you already have your acceptance letter from the university, so that means the university through a very thorough selection procedure selected you. This will, for the moment, this is enough. When you now get a new slot for your visa procedure, then VFS is likely to ask you, if the slot is so much in the future, let's say it's in September, to an updated admission letter for the next semester, because the current semester has already passed. So then they may ask for an updated letter. And our experience, and from speaking with German universities, and also from what we've seen in practice being done by German universities, is that they are very open to grant updated admission letters. But this is something that will have to be done in order to suffice to the visa process requirements. So yes, an updated admission letter will, in many cases, will be necessary, but you will hear it from VFS. So VFS will then contact you and say, listen, you have already submitted an admission letter. We will need an updated one, given that some time has passed in the meantime.
Right. So thank you. So it will, if the VFS tells you to get a fresh dated admission letter for the next semester, you will have to get in touch with the university and then request them for the same. That is not, there is no not a blanket procedure in place saying that all students who have got an admission to a German university will be able to go. So some working you'll have to do with that, but then the VFS will tell you very clearly that they need a letter of this kind.
Absolutely.
Then, yeah. Then there's again a question that came up multiple times. Will universities offer online courses for students who can't read Germany? And when will it begin?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think this is a very central question. As I said before, the current frustrating situation needs some patience for us and some flexibility, and these distance models they allow us to and allow students to already start studies even when they're not allowed to travel. And this is something that we have been raising for months with German universities. German universities that have, of course, same as in India, over the past 1.5 years of the pandemic, they have put in place a lot of distance learning, distance teaching models, because that was the only way to continue university teaching. So currently, many German universities are still in that mode. But as the situation in Germany is getting better, some of them are certainly also looking at now returning to a more physical mode of teaching, which, as we all know, and it's probably very difficult to deny, is a more effective and a more agreeable and really a nicer way of teaching. That's the real way of university teaching that we want. So what we've been discussing with these universities is that even though there may be a return to physical modes, that universities also try to provide hybrid models. Whereas those students that are already in Germany, that means German students, but also Indian students who are already there in quite big numbers, that they can then take classes physically, and that in addition, there are distance ways of also participating to these classes, and also ideally to exams from the distance. So I have spoken with many deans of German universities, and there's quite a number of them that are really very open to that. And for the simple fact that they cannot imagine having university teaching without students from India, but also from other countries who are now under the current travel restrictions not able to travel to Germany. So there are definitely German universities that are open to that, and we will continue to reach out to them, to encourage them, and we invite you to also do so in your correspondence with the international office of your university that accepted you. You have to understand that universities in Germany are very autonomous. That's something that we are very proud of, and that universities are very proud of, and it certainly is part of their appeal and also of their excellence. So they will decide this autonomously. We cannot force this upon them as German government. But they will be open to hear your advice. They will be open to hear your requests. And I can tell you that the voice of the Indian students in German universities is an important voice that doesn't go unnoticed.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. von Ritter. And the new questions pouring in chat and elsewhere on the media are asking, why does it happen that other countries in the European region are open to allowing people, but Germany is not?
Yes. So I think for this it's important to note that Germany has consistently, also over the past year, been open to students, even in a moment where many other countries completely closed down. Some of them are still completely closed down. And in Germany, we now have the case of this travel ban for virus variants area that applies to various countries in the world, as I said, including UK, including Portugal, including Russia and others, and unfortunately also including India. But under these restrictions, which are in place in Germany and which are I consider you really very strict. We are now opening up for visa procedures, and that is something that we do similar to other European countries. And you may have heard that France is now taking also visa for processing these visa. This is something that we are doing in line with France, that we are doing in line with other European countries. And yes, I mean, for the travel ban in Germany, this is something that, again, is done upon recommendation by the German virologists. It is done in an effort to globally spread the pandemic, but it's something that is evaluated regularly. So you have to imagine that every week the German Institute for Infectious Diseases, they look at the situation in all these countries that are listed as so-called virus variants areas. And they look at the situation and they say, can we still justify that we have these really very strict travel restrictions in place? And they do it with all the information available, also with information coming from the work that is being done in Indian laboratories, from the sequencing that is being done by the INSACOG task force. So this restriction that is in place in Germany is not a restriction that is arbitrary. That is something that I can tell you, and it's something that is being looked at constantly.
Yeah, thank you. And this is, I think, considering what you were just sharing with us, that there is nothing that is arbitrary or there is nothing that is based on some bias or so. One more note that all our social media channels were resonating with was, why are football stadiums open but students not allowed to go? Are they treating us as tourists? How would you respond to that, Philip?
Yes, I mean, when I saw these remarks, they struck me as, of course, remarks that have their justification. I mean, you want to go to Germany to study. Do you want to go to, and you have been selected by German universities? You're not going there for fun. You're not going there to watch some football game, and you're certainly not going there for tourism. And yet you are not allowed to travel. So, these remarks, I think they were quite well formulated. But then you have to see that in no ways are tourists, are students, Indian students treated like tourists. Because for tourists, it's very clear. For tourists, you cannot enter Germany for tourism. You cannot enter Germany for tourism. You cannot apply for a tourist visa for Germany. And there's no exception to that. Whereas for students, the situation is quite a different one. As I explained, the resident students, and these are many in numbers, they can travel to Germany even if during the pandemic in Germany, for obvious reasons, they went back to India, they went back to their families in India, and now they can go back to Germany if they have the residence. And in addition to that, even those who do not have the residence, so the first-time traveling students, they can now, with the opening of the visa sections, they can now apply for a visa. They can have their visa processed, so that once the travel restriction is lifted, they will get their visa stamped immediately with no delays. And it is something that does not apply to tourists. That is something that does not apply to visitors of football stadiums. And on this note of the football stadium, I think there was some controversy also around that in Germany. So I will not be the one who will be fully apologetic of that. But one thing that you also have to note is that in the stadiums in Germany of the Euro Championship, the stadium was only filled to 1/6 of its capacity. And all the people in the stadium had to wear masks. So this is a distance in the stadium that is far superior to all the distances that you would have in on a market or on the street or waiting for the bus or for the metro. So there were strict protocols in place in these exceptions that have been granted to the stadiums and to the Euro Championship.
Yep, thank you. At times, there are some images that do their rounds, do a happy rounds on social media and even on the television, and so they don't always present the kind of picture that might be true. It need not even have been from this year's whatever picture quota. It There are very, very often wrong pictures. There are very often old pictures. All one can say is that given that the entire world is facing this pandemic, one can only think ahead, think properly, check one's facts, and then that will help us not to have any misunderstandings in our own minds. So thank you very much, Philip, for sharing this. Uh, 1/6 is some capacity. I mean, that is not what one would have imagined when one formulated the argument. It can also happen that the argument got formulated out of depression, out of frustration. Understandable, but then let's take a step forward and leave our uh, prejudices behind and look forward to what are the good things that are happening. And here, not really an answer, not really from the perspective of asking for an answer, but more in terms of advice. There are also students who have got admissions into German universities and have, in order to be able to apply for a visa, already opened their blocked accounts, parked good money, even paid their rentals and possibly fees. The question is, how can we get our money back? The question can also be, can we get our money back? Will we get our money back? I don't know. I'm also sure, Philippe, that as a representative of the embassy, you cannot speak on behalf of all those landladies, landlords, and universities. But what could students who are stuck in such situations do or think of, according to you?
Yes, Aditi, thank you. I think this is a very important point. I mean, these are really very, very unfortunate situations that some of you who are tuning in today are in. And really, I will have to present you my sincere apologies for the situation, because you have undertaken all this paperwork and also these financial commitments in the wish and in your dream to go to study in Germany. And that's something that this dream is something that we very much welcome. And now, under this exceptional situation that we have right now, under the global pandemic that has the world in its grip now for over a year. Under this situation, now you find yourself with also this financial commitment that is somehow locked. So I understand that's something that I really want to can't stress enough. I understand that this is a very, very difficult situation and a heartbreaking situation. And I understand the stress that this puts you under. Now, some avenues for perhaps alleviating this stress, this also financial stress that you're under. So first, regarding the blocked account. So those of you who have started their visa application process, and part of the visa application process is a blocked account with a financial services provider, and this money is thereby now blocked. You can easily redeem this money from the blocked account. And the way to do it is to cancel your visa request and your visa process, and to ask VFS and the German embassy or consulate in question for a so-called non-objection letter that will be sent to you by email. And with this, you can have the money redeemed with the financial service provider, with the bank that you've chosen for your blocked account. This is something that will not take more than 3 days. This will, of course, terminate your visa request, but in some cases, this may be better rather than having this money sitting idly around and you, as you pointed out in some of your emails that reached me, you having to pay interest for that money. So this is one point. And then regarding the fees that you have to pay, first of all, for German state universities, there's usually very reduced or none fees that you have to pay, and very few of them are actually charged in advance. So all of you who have chosen state universities, they will not face a problem there. For some private universities, it's a different matter, and this is a practice that, well, some private universities charge quite a substantial fees ahead. It's not something that personally I find good, but then this is a decision of a commercial decision, so to say, of this private university, and it's also then something between you and the university to settle. I understand that this is a problematic thing, but this is something that relies with the business model, so to say, of some of these private universities. Now, as concerns the deposit of the that some of you may have paid for apartments, there, as Aditi said, this is so a contract between you and the respective landlord or landlady, which I cannot and may not interfere. But in Germany, the landladies and landlords, especially of university accommodations, they usually quite easily find new tenants, because many of you may know and may have already experienced the markets for renting apartments in German university towns and cities are quite tight. So again, there should be some leeway to negotiate with these landlords and landladies. And for those who still don't have rented apartments, we advise not to do so as of now, but to wait until there's a clear timeline for the lifting of the travel restrictions, so as to avoid some deposit there getting lost and you losing money.
Right. Thank you for explaining it so nicely and clearly, most importantly. So there are certain steps that you yourself will have to take and move forward. It always depends upon whether you're dealing with individuals or organizations or universities. Accordingly, what steps you need to check or take is likely to change, vary. I see a number of questions pouring in, but we have already reached the end of our session. We had time till 4 o'clock, and I really thank all of you to be there. Just so that you know, we had almost close to 2,000 or more students joining in for this session, which is great. We understand what the concerns are, and as you've heard from Philippe, that there are various people, various bodies, various organizations that are actually working to alleviate the trouble, alleviate the problems that most of you are facing at this point of time, and that effort will continue. But it's not for me to say more, and I would like to request Philippe to possibly give us one message in the end, give a message to all the students and participants of this session before we close the session. Over to you, Philippe.
Thank you. Yes. So first, it's great that you have all joined. Thank you so much. And again, apologies for my very incomplete presence to this very important exchange only through voice. I look forward to seeing you all with your face and showing my face also. And perhaps if I want to boil it down to one message, then I would say this exchange was important to explain to you where we are standing and what we are doing right now and where we are heading. And this exchange is by no means the end. We do not forget you. We do not forget your worries. We are very much aware of them, and we are thankful for you to bring them to our notice. And we will continue to do everything that we can at the German embassy, also at the relevant ministries in Germany, and in close cooperation also, by the way, with the Indian government, who is also very worried and worries with you. And so we will together, we will do everything that we can to give you a perspective, to find ways in order to perhaps alleviate the worries that you have right now, and to work towards the moment where you can again travel to Germany. Until then, I'm sorry that I will have to ask you for some patience. I will ask you also to closely follow us on our homepage of the German Embassy, to closely follow the German Embassy social media, and also closely follow the DRD, to which I'm hugely grateful for having organized this session, and who are really instrumental in explaining all the details, all the nitty-gritty of going to study in Germany, which often is quite complicated. I really applaud you all for having gone through that, and for still being willing to go through all these paperworks and all these administrative things. So really, please, we will continue to stand with you, continue to bear with us, follow us closely. We will continue to have all your worries on our mind and to bring them to the notice of all the relevant decision makers. And we hope together with you that the situation is going to get better. We have set some first steps in motion with the opening of the visa sections for visa processing, with the acceptance of COVID Shield in Germany. And we look forward to the next steps. We hope that they will be possible to be done soon. And I look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for your patience. Thanks a lot for your time. And if you have any questions, you know the DAD is always around. Drop a message, write an email, attend a session, and your questions will be answered. Thanks a lot, all of you, for participating. Stay well, stay safe. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.